Everyone, call this meeting to order. Welcome back to meeting number 119 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. We're resuming the meeting, which was suspended last Wednesday. We are in committee business still, resuming debate on the motion in the name of Mr. Perkins. Before we continue, you're all aware of the new rules around the microphones. Please keep your earpiece away from the mic in the places noted so we can protect the hearing of our very valued interpreters. When we suspended, Mr. Kuzmierczuk, who I see is wearing black in mourning for his Toronto Maple Leafs, had the floor.
Are we sure it's not his electoral chances, Chair?
Yes, I apologize to Mr. Sousa and Mr. Kuzmierczuk. Yes, but Mr. Kuzmierczuk has the floor, and I will start speaking less, but Mr. Kuzmierczuk will give you back the floor. Hopefully, when we are done today, though, we are still in committee business. I do have to discuss Canada Post and the estimates, just if we can get through all this today, just a heads up. But go ahead, Mr. Kuzmierczuk.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say for all the Leaf fans out there, take heart. There is a new dawn. There is a dawn after the dark, and like I said, we'll be back next year better than ever. So go Leafs, go! Just wanted to put that on.
Point of order, Chair. I hear there's a lot of people expressing interest in taking over the leadership of the Leafs organization. So I think the speculation is alive and well, and maybe a new coach will change the dynamic for them.
Please continue, Mr. Kuzmierczuk. And although my Oilers are still going strong, I do mourn the loss of the Leafs. But go ahead, Mr. Kuzmierczuk. On the EV main motion, because I believe we removed the amendment. Go ahead, Mr. Kuzmierczuk.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, even though we're hearing the Conservatives again with their divisive rhetoric, I will say let's rally around the remaining Canadian teams that are in the playoffs. Go Oil, go Canucks. It'll be hard to parse that out this round, but
time we'll hear them say anything good about Oil.
Our Canadian teams. So we're on the subject of the motion that Mr. Perkins has brought forward yet again to this committee. It is a motion that is almost identical to the motion that was brought previously to this committee. It was voted down by this committee, and it's also a motion. It is also a motion that is before the Indu committee, and so this is. We're here basically taking up time, as I see it, from important studies that we should be discussing here today. Whether it is red tape reduction, which is absolutely critical to support our small businesses and to support Canadians, whether it's diversity in procurement. Unfortunately, here we are discussing a motion that again is recycled, and it is almost identical to the motion that was brought before us and voted down just a few days ago. But here we are. I see this as a distraction from the very fact that this government, this Liberal government, has brought to Canada over $50 billion in auto investments in just the last 4 years. That is an astounding amount of investment and job creation in communities like mine in Windsor, in communities like St. Thomas, in communities across Quebec, in BC, really right across the country. And it's incredible when you combine it with the fact that not only are you seeing tremendous investment in the auto sector, but you're seeing also the completion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline as well too, which is a major Canada building infrastructure project that's going to have a big impact. And again, when you compare that track record of job creation and investment, tremendous, $50 billion in auto, tens of thousands of jobs being created in automotive and manufacturing, tens of thousands of spin-off jobs in manufacturing, the Trans Mountain Pipeline as well too. And when you compare that to the Conservative track record 8 years ago, where the Conservative government at the time lost 300,000 manufacturing jobs across Canada and was unable to complete a single major infrastructure project. The difference between today and yesterday is black and white. It's incredibly stark. And so what we're seeing here today is a motion brought before this committee with the purpose of doing nothing but trying to distract away from the good news of the $50 billion in auto investment across Canada. And here I'm talking about the Stellantis battery plant in Windsor. There's 2,000 folks. There's 2,000 folks building the battery plant in Windsor right now, 2,000. When you take a drive down EC Row and you hang a right on Banwell Road and you head towards the tracks, you drive by literally hundreds upon hundreds of pickup trucks and cars there with Ontario license plates of workers that are building a battery plant as we speak. These are local workers, these are Canadian workers, these are unionized workers, these are workers who are part of the CBTU, they're part of the iron workers, the millwrights, painters, you name it. And they're local workers and they're building that battery plant. And when the battery plant is done, you're going to have an additional 2,500 permanent workers at that battery plant that are going to be building batteries, for generations to come. And these 2,500 permanent workers will be local, they will be Canadian, and they will quite likely be unionized. And again, this is a tremendous story that the Conservatives are desperate to try to distract from. And then up the road, you travel literally an hour and a half up the 401 to St. Thomas, and you see another Volkswagen, another battery plant, another generational battery plant being built. You're going to have 2,000 workers, local, Canadian, building that battery plant in St. Thomas. You're going to have 3,000 plus permanent workers, local, Canadian, working, building batteries in St. Thomas. And again, Northvolt in Quebec, you're going to have over 1,000 people building the battery plant there. You're going to have over 3,000 permanent jobs there, building batteries for generations to come. And of course, the Honda investment, the single largest investment in the history of this country, largest investment in automotive and the largest battery investment in North America. Again, 4,500 jobs supported permanently, with thousands of jobs building those 4 factories that will be built across Ontario and across Canada. That's incredible. And that's saying nothing about Michelin investment, Rio Tinto. What you're seeing right now is the world is coming to Canada to build. They're making investments. The world is making huge investments, huge bets on Canada to build batteries and to build the electric vehicle supply chain here. And it is incredible to see. And it is an incredible turnaround from what we saw 8 years ago when the Conservatives were in power. And I just want to underline again, under the Conservatives, you had 300,000 manufacturing jobs lost. And in communities, manufacturing communities like mine, you had 11.2% unemployment. 11.2% unemployment. And close to 30% unemployment for young people.
Point of order, Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Jennings.
Thank you, Chair. The member is obviously repeating himself, but I would also just say if he said this has been before the committee before and it was defeated, if this member is so confident that he has the votes on this, why doesn't he let it go to a vote? It's odd that he is claiming on the one hand that the majority of the committee doesn't want this motion, but on the other hand, he's filibustering to prevent it from going to a vote. If he thinks he has the votes, then he should stop repeating himself and let the committee proceed to make its determination on this matter one way or the other.
Thank you. He's half right, Mr. Kuzmierczak. You are starting to repeat yourself again.
Sure.
But if we could get back to the motion, please.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I appreciate your what you've just said, Mr. Chair. And again, I think it's important for us as we're picking up this thread of this debate to provide a little bit of context and the path that got us here. And that's what I'm trying to do here. And so I wanted to add what I wanted to say as well, too, is all the investments that I've just outlined that this Liberal government's been able to deliver in the last 4 years What that means is we are, according to Bloomberg, we are now the #1 destination, number one jurisdiction. Canada is #1 in the world in the electric vehicle supply chain. That is remarkable. That is remarkable what we've been able to accomplish here in the last 4 years. We're also #1 in foreign direct investment per capita. Think about that for a second. Canada is #1 in foreign direct investment per capita. It means we've completely outpaced, beat out countries like China, like the United States, in attracting foreign direct investment. And what we're seeing is global companies showing tremendous confidence in Canada, investing their capital in this country because they see the power of the Canadian workforce, they see the skills, they see the tremendous resources that we have here. They see the investments we're making in clean energy. They see the investments we're making in fighting climate change, and they want to be here and they want to be part of the action. Stellantis and LG, a Korean company, is locating, putting billions of dollars here. Volkswagen, a German company, locating billions of dollars here. Northvolt, a Swedish company, billions of dollars. Honda, Japanese company. Think about that for a second. And think about how that challenges the narrative that the Conservatives are desperately trying to put out there and pump out there, the misinformation and the narrative that they're trying to hold up there. When you've got companies from all around the world that want to locate here, want to invest here, because they see their future here in Canada as well too, and they want to build it with us. They want to build it with us, which is remarkable. And so when you drive by the battery plant in Windsor, it's incredible. I highly encourage all the members of the committee to take a drive to visit. Would love to show them. It's incredible. It is the size of 150 hockey rinks, what's being built there. And as you drive by, you literally see hundreds upon hundreds of cars, pickup trucks with Ontario license plates, local workers building the battery plant as we speak. And so that's where we're at. And it's important to note, Mr. Perkins wants us to listen to him. He's again trying to bring forward this motion forward, which is almost again quintessentially the same motion that we saw last week. And yet Mr. Perkins wants us to listen to him, but I'd prefer to listen to the CB.
I have not had the floor in quite a while, and Mr. MP Kamirchak's been speaking now for, I think, the two meetings over 2 hours in filibustering. So it's, I think, Mr. Kamirchak that wants the committee to hear from him.
Continue, Mr. Kuzmirchak.
This issue, I do want to speak on this issue, and I will take this opportunity to speak on this issue because it impacts my community greatly, because of the fact that we do have a battery plant in my community, because we have a battery plant has created 2,000 jobs for local workers in my community, and because that battery plant will create an additional 2,500 jobs permanently for workers in my community, local Canadian workers in my community. And so it is important for me to talk about this. And again, Mr. Perkins is persistent in bringing back this motion that has been voted down in the past, and so I will be persistent in what I want to say as well too.
Go ahead on a point of order, Mr. Perkins.
The rules around filibustering, so the MP Kamirchak doesn't seem to understand, is no repetition. It actually takes quite a talent to do that, which clearly this MP doesn't have, because that's about the 5th time, and twice already. He's already said that in 15 minutes today. So I'd ask the chair to keep him on relevance and stop repeating himself.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Perkins. And Mr. Kuzmirchak, despite some of the... Sorry, Mr. Drouin, I have the floor, please.
Oh, sorry, Chair.
Thanks. Mr. Kuzmirchak, Mr. Perkins is right on the repetition part. If you are going to continue, we do have to follow that. We do give, obviously, very wide breadth for the debate, but the repetition is one that we're trying to avoid. I think, Ms. Atwin, you had point of order. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think it's inappropriate to have made the comment that Mr. Perkins did regarding a lack of talent of the member. I don't think we need to delve into personal attacks like that. So if we could just get back to what we're trying to achieve, that would be great.
On the same point of order, Chair.
That is Mr. General, are you serious?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think it's unparliamentary to say that a person lacks a specific talent. If Mr. Perkins said I lacked talent in baking or singing, I wouldn't consider that an attack. I would consider that accurate.
I think,
It just
thanks
seems,
very much. Everyone's point is taken. Mr. Kuzmierczuk, you have the floor, but if we could watch the repetition, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate, again, your words, and I just wanted to reassure you that I am just about to conclude here. So in the next moment or two, I will be more than happy to yield the floor. I did want to say that I would never impugn or disrespect someone by commenting, making a snide remark about somebody's a committee member's character or talent or skills. I think that is below the belt. Of course, I am happy to talk about the lack of the Conservatives, their inability to create jobs when they were in power 8 years ago, which is, again, that's not me saying that. That's their track record that speaks volumes. So I'd rather have their track record speak, and I'm going to refrain from making comments about their skill level or talent level or their character. But what I did want to say is that, again, going back to my original point, Mr. Perkins keeps bringing this motion forward. It keeps getting defeated here, and it's a motion he wants us to listen to Mr. Perkins and his motion. But I'd rather listen to the CBTU. I'd rather listen to the CBTU, which sent a letter to this committee last week stating that they do not want to see this motion move forward. They were very explicitly clear about that. I'd rather listen to Mr. Sean Strickland. I'd rather listen to the CBTU, who said they don't want this to proceed forward. I'd rather listen to the APMA, Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, who says they do not want to see this motion move forward because they see it as a risk to the investments that were already made. I'd prefer to listen to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, who again signed a letter stating very clearly that this will do irreparable harm to Canada's ability to attract additional investments. This is the letter that they had circulated again to the entire committee. This is a letter that was signed. I'd rather again listen to not only the APMA and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I'd rather listen to the Canadian manufacturers and exporters that again said explicitly that, and I will quote here, the committee risks doing irreparable harm to Canada's investment attraction negotiating position. So I'd rather listen to them, and I'd rather listen to the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association that includes companies like Stellantis in my neighborhood, and also the Global Automakers of Canada. These are the folks that are saying they don't want to see this motion move forward. Lana Payne, the Unifor president, the largest union in Canada, is saying they don't want to see this motion go forward. And the president at the time of local Unifor 444, this is Dave Cassidy. This is the union that represents thousands of auto workers in my community. They will be representing the battery folks that will be building the batteries in my community. And again, Mr. Cassidy was absolutely clear and explicit in saying he doesn't want to see this motion move forward. And this is what he said when he was up in Ottawa meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau.
Point of order.
President Cassidy said,
Sorry,
and I
Mr.
quote,
Kuzmierczuk, we have a point of order. Go ahead, Mr. Perkins.
This motion was moved long after the union leader he's referencing actually left his job, so he didn't comment on this. So I would ask that the member at least speak to accuracy when he's doing this.
Continue, Mr. Kuzmierczuk.
So I just want to state this is what Dave Cassidy, the president of Unifor at the time, Unifor Local 444, representing auto workers in my community, said when he met the Prime Minister of Canada in Ottawa. He said, "My message is simple. This has turned into nothing but political hay," is what he was talking about in terms of the Conservative motion, trying to undermine the investment in the Stellantis battery plant, trying to create hay about this. And he goes on to say, we have to make sure all the theatrics and all the political stuff is gone. And so he was very clear about that. He was also very clear. He did say, if it was up to the Conservatives, we would not have this investment in Windsor today. They look at it as corporate welfare instead of a return on an investment for all the workers that will be there. And so this is again straight from the president representing the workers in Windsor, and is absolutely clear why we need to vote on this motion and send it back to the send it back. And so this is really important. And again, like I said, I'd rather listen to CBTU, APMA. I'd rather listen to the Chamber of Commerce. I'd rather listen to Unifor, and I certainly would rather listen to Unifor Local 444 that represents all the auto workers in my community. That's all I have to say at this time, and looking forward to listening to the opinions and the insights of my committee members from on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzmierczak. No one else? Can we move to a vote on this and just, oh, go ahead, Mr. Bachrach.
If we go back to the message that was shared with the committee from the Building Trades Union, I believe the sense in that statement was that there are negotiations that are ongoing. There's a concern that the committee's deliberations will compromise those negotiations, and the desire from the building trades was that the committee put this on ice for a month and potentially return to it down the road pending the outcome of those conversations that are going on. So with that, I think it's more prudent to vote to adjourn this motion before us and pick it up at a later date than to have a vote on it and risk having that vote compromise the negotiations. So I'll move that we adjourn debate.
Okay. You can't put a condition on a motion to adjourn, but I understand. So just a motion to adjourn?
You can, but then it's debatable.
Exactly.
But your intent is a motion to adjourn the debate.
Any member of the committee can bring back the motion at any future date.
Yep.
I think the intention is clear.
Yep.
And I think
I just want to be clear that this was a motion to adjourn the debate.
correct.
Perfect. Go ahead, sir. Yes, please.
Ms. Atwin?
Just being sure, Taylor.
Yes, in favor.
Monsieur Drouin? Mr. Johari?
Support.
Mr. Kuzmierczak?
Support.
Mr. Souza? Ms. Block? Mr. Janice?
No.
Ms. Kuzi?
Against.
Madame Vignala?
Oui.
And Mr. Bachrach?
In favor.
So, yes pour 7, 7, et nays contre 3, 3.
Wonderful. Yes, I'll get you, Miss Blocks. Don't give me that look. I'm just teasing you. Yes, I see you. Colleagues, I want to discuss, I see you as well, Ms. Atwin. I want to discuss, before I get to those, just May 29th and Mr. Genuis. May 29th, just to keep everyone, well, two things, just keep everyone informed. I brought up before Canada Post, who we have, the committee's made clear is to appear for the study on the rural post office by himself, the PSBC, has agreed to appear on the 29th. Somehow PSBC and they had decided they're going to appear together, which is against the will of the committee. So we are communicating to them. He can appear, he's welcome to come along with PSBC on the mains, but he will appear separately. My intent is to do a 4-hour meeting on the 29th. Starting off with PSBC on the mains with the minister, TBS on the mains, the second hour with the minister, and then the final 2 hours Canada Post to recognize the motion from Mr. Bachrach and the will of the committee to Canada Post appear separately on the rural post office. So just so everyone's aware about that. Wednesday, the clerk has sent out a note. We are doing the line by line for Canada Life. We've got a small amount of recommendations. It's relatively short reports. I'm hoping we'll be able to finish in its entirety this Wednesday. Before I go to Ms. Block, did you have something specifically on the 29th?
Yes. Can you go through that slowly?
Yeah.
I'm aging and my hearing and eyesight going away. So
As am I, Mr. Shawari, so you might have to repeat what you just asked. Intended to do a 4-hour meeting. We tried to get PSPC and Treasury Board and Canada Post to be flexible with us, and unfortunately, and with much disappointment, they've all refused. So they're all going to appear on the same day for the mains. So the first hour, 4:30 to 5:30, will be PSPC on the mains with the minister. 5:30 to 6:30 will be Treasury Board on the mains with the minister. And the last 2 hours will be Canada Post, solely to be here on the rural post office study. PSPC, I've stated, wanted to appear with Canada Post, but we've brought this up, I think it was about a month ago. That was not the will of the committee. They're welcome to, PSPC is welcome to bring them along, 4:30 to 5:30 if they wish, but the will of the committee and my intent is to have them here separately, 6:30 to 8:30, solely on the rural post office study.
okay, so if I may go back.
I'm sorry, just let me interrupt. Before we get to Ms. Block, Ms. Atwin, and Mr. Genuas, we'll just finish all the discussion on May 29th.
Thank you. So really on May 29th, the first 2 hours, as you're suggesting, 4:30 to 6:30, which was the plan. This is as we had planned before. This is on Main. We're going to have PSPC and TBS to come. So that hasn't changed. So all we're adding,
yes or no?
we're adding a 2 hour next to that, and that's where we're bringing Canada Post.
That's correct.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Mrs. Vignola?
Vous venez tout juste de...
You've just answered my question. I had exactly the same one. Thank you.
We had tried to get PSPC by themselves for 2 hours and TBS by themselves on 2 hours on the mains, as has been tradition. Unfortunately, we have not been successful in getting them to be flexible with their calendar. So, Mr. Backrack, is this on the 29th issue?
Pardon me?
Is this on the issue of the 29th?
It's on the issue of Canada Post appearing on the study on rural postal service.
Okay. Specifically on the 29th, about the President of Canada Post appearing? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I would love to have the documents that we requested by that time, so that we can ask him about the specifics. Just noting that the information was not included as requested.
Yep.
And if those details could be provided, it would be
Yeah,
helpful.
we'll follow up.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Johns, did you have your hand up regarding the 29th?
I just wanted to make a quick comment that I'm disappointed to see the continuing erosion of ministerial accountability in terms of reporting on the estimates. There was a time when even Liberal members would ask ministers to appear for 2 hours on estimates. Now the norm has become 1 hour plus an hour of officials. And now they're trying to erode it further to have both ministers appear back to back, so you lose the additional hour with officials for follow-up questions as well. By next fall, I suspect we'll have an offer of 7 minutes for each minister once every 2 years or something. And maybe I'm on dangerous ground even suggesting that. I don't want to give them ideas, but this is stupid. It undermines the accountability function that committees are supposed to have. It's clearly the intention of the government to offer ministers for a very limited window on the same day without the opportunity to have follow-up questions from officials. It's bad for our democracy. There's not much we can do about it, I suppose, since committees don't have the power to summon ministers. It's a bit ironic in some ways that we can go all the way to the wall demanding answers from other people, but ministers blow off tradition when it comes to accountability. And I think it's bad for Parliament, bad for democracy, but it's frankly just what I've come to expect from Liberal ministers. So I want to register my displeasure and leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Genuas. Mrs. Vignola.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I've just got a question for clarification on the presence of ministers, and in particular the timetable. Isn't it the chair who sets the schedule for meetings? And who should meet our needs and try and make the best of the situation with the time that's left for us?
We do invite, and we've offered different days for the ministers to appear. Unfortunately, they have refused. They've stated this is the only date available to them. I take the estimates very seriously, as you're probably aware. And I think I'm in agreement with Mr. Genuis. It's unfortunate that we cannot have the ministers here for the departments for 2 hours to defend their estimates, especially considering the size of the money and, frankly, the poor results from the departmental results. But unfortunately, this is all they will make themselves available for. On the 29th, Mr. Juan? And
I'm just sensing a bit of malfeasance from our side, but I mean, I've been on this committee before. It would happen that once in a while ministers appear on both dates. I didn't hear any objections as to have the department appear after, so I don't know what the issue is. If you want the department, but I've been at committees where opposition members just wanted to question the ministers, and the heck with the department. But if the opposition wants the department to appear, I don't sense that we have an objection on this side. We've never had an objection, so it's just a matter of scheduling. But it's not a big issue.
Thanks. Mr. Jory, were you making the same point?
Exactly. We could call the officials back. Not an issue.
Mr. Genuis?
Yeah, so on that point, my preference would be if the minister is only going to make him or herself available for an hour, that we would have officials come for the next hour so that we can follow up with unanswered questions and emerge from that meeting. So we're kind of working down the list from what should happen, next best. But I think better than what's currently proposed would be to have the deputy ministers, and it should be the deputy ministers then, but the deputy ministers come back for an hour and an hour at a subsequent meeting before the estimates are adopted. So if there's agreement on that, let's do that. And just speaking of which, Chair, it just reminds me that there was some follow-up testimony from the deputy last week that there were some unanswered questions that were left on the table that we had been told we would get responses to by the end of the week. Did we receive responses on that?
Yeah, just two things. Mr. Juan has a point. You've made a point. If necessary, we'll bring in the officials separately. The original offer by the government was to have both ministers and the president of Canada Post and all the officials all together, all 16 of them, for 1 2-hour meeting, with the ministers all appearing together for 1 hour only. So I think this hopefully is the best way forward. We'll get, I apologize, we'll get the ministers and then, if necessary, the officials separately. Mr. Genuis is bringing up the issue of PSBC delivering names or documents to us last Friday. They've provided it to the committee in a password-locked file that they somehow cannot get unpassworded. So we are following up with the deputy minister to obey the will of the committee, and trust me, we are on it. My intent is to have it to everyone today. I do not know why they decided to do this route. I suspect, Hanlon's razors don't attribute to malice. What is more attributable to incompetence, but I have great concerns considering the pushback and the commentary made by the bureaucrats when we asked for this information. But we are on it. I'm hoping we'll have it today.
Yeah, Chair, I feel like I've walked into a Monty Python sketch here. Like we promised to provide the information. Okay, we'll provide the information, but but it's behind a password protected mechanism, and we won't provide you with the password. Like that is terrible, but also comically ridiculous. But just to follow up on the earlier point,
We will,
So
sorry, I will interrupt. We'll have it shortly. The old school way, they'll deliver it in paper and we'll get it scanned and sent out. So we'll be provided today.
Okay. Maybe they'll send it by fax even. Sure. No,
We were thinking cable.
We should
or
axe the
telegraph.
facts. But just on the question of officials, you said kind of if necessary. No, let's get the DMs in and schedule them for immediately after the ministers if we can't have
that's
them
the will
same
of the
day.
committee as opposed to one person's will, but
I think it is the will of the committee. It was Mr. Drouin's suggestion. So
You said officials, so
okay,
we're
we'll follow
asking
up with
for
them.
officials.
Okay,
so
thanks.
Let's not be that specific.
Wonderful. So we can put the 29th to bed. Thanks everyone for their feedback and their input.
On that, sort of. Have we also heard back from the premiers who were asked to provide additional evidence when they testified March 29th?
Don't believe we've received anything, but as
Is
you're
there a
no doubt
course of
aware,
action?
we are between clerks.
On that as the others.
Well, we follow up once, but
Okay.
Can we
we
send
do a
another
follow up
letter,
again, please?
Can we send another letter to follow up, please?
we can follow up with
We're
another
such
email.
expert witnesses for that very important study. I'd like to hear what they have to share with us.
Yeah, Ms. Block, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think the good news out of this debate, or what is fortunate, is that Canadians are watching what is happening in parliamentary committees more than ever before. And they are watching what's happening in this committee because they understand the very important work we are doing in scrutinizing the spending of their taxpayer dollars. And so on that note, I would like to move the motion that I put on notice, I believe it was a week ago or a little more than a week ago, that given that a Global Affairs Canada investigation into government contracts found a failure rate of 26%, and the report found, and I quote, the signed contract was not provided. One contract was approved by an individual who benefited from the transaction, unquote. The committee called the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Melanie Joly, the Honourable Melanie Joly, to appear for a 2-hour meeting, and the Deputy Minister and officials responsible for the report to appear for a 2-hour meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I've got a speaking list of Mr. Genuis and Mrs. Kusi. Go ahead, Mr. Genuis.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank Ms. Block for putting forward this important motion. Look, we have seen across this NDP Liberal government so many examples of outrageous contracting irregularities, and taxpayers are now coming to see the pattern through which their money is wasted. Broken, unfair, unreasonable contracting processes that reward well-connected NDP Liberal insiders and do not deliver value for money. We have seen this pattern over and over again. This committee has done extensive work on the Arrive scam scandal, but we are now seeing that the Arrive scam scandal is the tip of the iceberg. It's part of a larger pattern, which is that we have a government that is focused on paying and rewarding well-connected NDP Liberal insiders instead of delivering efficient, effective results for Canadians. There is so much waste. There is so much in the way of savings to be realized and value to be created by improving the system. And Chair, it's not lost on me, and I think on many Canadians, that many of the people who are at the center of sketchy procurement and contracting questions also happen to be those who are being considered or want to be considered for future Liberal leadership. we've got Minister Anita Anand, the president of the Treasury Board, and all the problems we've seen there. We have the public safety minister responsible for CBSA, where the Arrive Scam scandal is happening now, being rumored, and now Minister Jolie with the contracting problems at Foreign Affairs. So I would say that these ministers responsible for outrageous procurement problems within their departments, who are looking for a promotion in their role, they should come before the committee and provide an explanation for their management of their current roles and the procurement problems that we've seen. So it's a common sense motion, giving Minister Jolie an opportunity to be accountable and provide a report to this committee on what has happened. So I hope that members will see the obvious logic of supporting this motion, saying that the minister should come and appear. I'll say, Chair, hopefully not on the 29th as well. You never know with the government, but look, if that's the only time, if she'll come from 8:30 to 10:30 on the 29th, we'll take it. Ministers need to provide responses, and I'll just say as well, this committee has developed, I think, over the months we've been working on this issue, a particular experience and knowledge as it relates to government procurement problems. Best practices and how far this current government is missing the mark when it comes to best practices for procurement. So I think we are ready and well positioned to do this. If somebody is, as the various leadership candidates try to position themselves for being the future leader of the Liberal Party, they should be willing to, in their current roles, come before committee and provide answers. I'll say as well, this committee has rightly asserted the prerogatives of parliamentary committees when it comes to getting answers from government contractors. Christian Firth was supposed to appear. He refused to appear. He refused summons. Eventually, he appeared before this committee, but didn't answer key questions. And as a result of that, we made a report to the House. He was summoned to appear before the House. So it would seem to me that after we've established that we are committed to ensuring that that private citizens who are involved in sketchy government contracting provide answers, we should be equally insistent and equally willing to use the tools that are available to us to assert also that ministers of the Crown who are elected and charged by the executive with running departments and being accountable for them, that we would be equally or more insistent that those ministers provide answers for what happens in their department. If we're going to go all the way in saying that Christian Firth, Darren Anthony, other such people have to provide responses to committees, then we should say the same thing about ministers of the Crown and not have a dynamic in which cover is provided for ministers not being accountable for those activities. So I hope we see consistency from this committee, that we expect the same accountability of ministers as we have asked for from private citizens involved in contracting. So I'll look forward to seeing where members land on that. And Chair, I'll wrap up my remarks at that point.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Cusi.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank the Leader of the Official Opposition for this birthday card that he gave me last week. Those well wishes were very well received, so I'm grateful for that. I want to start by saying I just want to follow up on my colleague's comments. I think that this motion follows a theme that we've had in this committee, and that is to search for accountability from not only departments, but fundamentally ministers. It actually would have been my desire that we would have seen all departments that had contracts with GC Strategies, their ministers show up at this committee, but unfortunately we didn't have that opportunity. But I think given this report specifically at Global Affairs Canada, it behooves us to call in the minister to defend the procurement within this department. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would actually encourage all departments to perhaps conduct the same exercise within their respective departments to really internally look at what is going on in their departments and how money is being spent, because that is fundamentally what this committee is about, is ensuring the funds that were granted out of trust by the Canadian people were well spent by departments who are fundamentally overseen by their ministers. And so to me, the appearance of the minister would absolutely be in alignment with the mandate of this committee and the oversight for which this committee has the responsibility of. Now, my second point, Mr. Chair, comes from my personal experience as a management consular officer at Foreign Affairs Canada, which was then DFAT, which was then DFAT-D, which, pardon me, is now Global Affairs Canada. But as a former management consular officer, Mr. Chair, I can tell you that the audit team at Global Affairs Canada is the best that there is. They go into missions, they go into departments, they leave no stone unturned in terms of their evaluation. And I can truly say that their work is invaluable. And I give them thanks and credit for shining this light on the department, for having the courage to bring this information forward, because really that is the job of a bureaucrat, one of which I proudly was for close to a decade and a half, is to not only do the work of the Canadian people, Mr. Chair, but also to speak truth to power. And I feel in bringing forward this brave group of public servants at Global Affairs Canada is bringing truth to power. And I was also, I'll add, Mr. Chair, very proud to be the interim director of a sister group of this audit group during my time at Global Affairs Canada. So the quality of this work and the objective of this work, I am in strong support of, and I give thanks to, and I would like the minister to be held to account for what this outstanding group uncovered. And my final comment is, Mr. Chair, is that certainly the ongoing role of the Minister of Foreign Affairs has been one of relations external to Canada, which my colleagues would agree with me. I believe we have seen to be reactive. They have not been consistent. They have not come from a place of consistent values, as we saw with the previous government, with the Harper government. And I'm very excited about the return to a values-based foreign affairs platform in a future Poilievre government. But what the minister did make her mandate is revitalization of Global Affairs Canada, and with that, supposedly, a new hope, a hope that the members of the Canadian Foreign Service and public servants at Global Affairs Canada could have faith in the work that their department is doing. And yet this audit team uncovered cracks, uncovered faults, uncovered areas that need to be improved upon. Foreign Affairs Canada, Global Affairs Canada serves as the emissaries of Canada to the world, and therefore serves as the foundation of values, Mr. Chair, for Canada. And one of the fundamental values of Canada under a Poilievre government will be value for money. And yet this procurement report did not show that this was so, did not show that this work was always conducted in an ethical manner. So if the very heart of our foreign policy, of where it is conducted, is being completed in this manner, that's a problem. That's a problem, Mr. Chair, and Canadians deserve answers from the chief diplomat, from the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And we need to bring her in here to be held to account for what this incredible audit team uncovered. I think it's very important as it serves of a beacon not only within the government itself currently to show that they are willing to take account for their work and improve upon it, but on the very foundation of our values here in Canada, which Global Affairs Canada is, which is supposed to act as a light, a guiding light for the rest of Canada. In this instance, it was not the case. And so we need the Minister of Foreign Affairs here to account for that, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Jawari, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's great to hear that we acknowledge the work of the internal audit team at GAC. So I echo that statement. The rest of it, I think it was political. But the good thing is the internal team did a great job, and it was proactively and publicly released. So this was an internal audit done. The internal audit is focused on low dollar values. The ministers, and I use the word ministers, do not have any involvement in approval of the low dollar values. But having an opportunity to ask questions and get an understanding of what those low dollar values are, it's a great idea. And having an opportunity to talk to those who have authorized those, it's a great idea. By the way, there are 3 ministers as part of GAC, and we are not sure, aside from the political reason why Minister Jolie has been highlighted here. There are Minister of International Development, Minister of International Trade, as well as Minister of Foreign Affairs. All those 3 ministers are part of the GAC, so highlighting or selecting one minister as opposed to the others for an area that they do not have any signing authority, or they were not engaged in signing authority is questionable. Our suggestion is we would gladly like to invite the officials to come, those who and give us an understanding and the breakdown of these. They're naturally publicly released, so it was a good opportunity for us to look at what type of contract there were, what was the purpose, why, how many of the low dollar value contracts were under one theme, and then after that, if we see any trend that points to a specific ministry, then we would be open into having senior officials to come. And again, if that comes into brings into a light any type of ministerial involvement, then we would be glad to support a motion to bring the ministers. So as such, as it's drafted, we will not be supporting this motion, and at least I won't be supporting it. I believe the approach that we should take is, first of all, commanding the internal audit group, as I believe everybody is doing, getting an understanding of the scope of the audit, the fact that it's publicly shared. It's a great opportunity for us to all look at it, then have the procurement department within the GAC come in and explain what those are. And then if we need to, we would be able to move into officials at the next level. And then I doubt it, but we'll be in a position to look at the ministerial involvement. So unless we could consider this to vote and we'll vote it down, or we could, or at least I will vote it down, or we could look into amendment as such. Thank you.
I have Mr. Genuis, please, then Mrs. Block.
Thank you, Chair. This is the typical approach of Liberals to try to bury the necessary accountability. So let's start with establishing what the principle of ministerial responsibility is about. Ministerial responsibility means that the minister takes responsibility for what happens at their department. That if there are problems, those problems may relate to decisions that they themselves were not directly involved in, but nonetheless, they are responsible for establishing a culture and protocols through which there is respect for taxpayers' money. And the Liberal member across the way was kind of dismissive of these concerns, saying, "Well, we're talking about low dollar values here." This audit.
Point of order, Mr.
A small
Sorry, Mr.
random.
Genuis, have a point of order. Mr. Shorey?
Just as a clarification to my colleague, I was not dismissing it. I was
Sure,
just
that's not a point of
highlighting
order.
the
That's,
fact that it was
editorializing,
low dollar value, and I
remember,
said it's worth it
That's
to
not a
bring
point
the
of order,
officials
Mr.
so they
Jauhari.
can explain. So it was not dismissive. Thank you.
You should reflect on.
Thanks. Mr. Jouari had the floor. Mr. Genos, it's back to you.
Thank you, Chair. That was not a point of order, and members across should learn the rules both of contracting and of parliamentary committees. As I was saying,
the best.
the committee, the auditors looked at a random sample of contracts, 72, and 26% of them did not comply with the Financial Administration Act. So over a quarter of contracts that were sampled didn't comply with the law as it relates to contracting. So this is a massive problem and clearly a systematic problem. So if there's a systematic problem in a department and we let ministers repeatedly get away with saying, oh, well, those decisions are being made by other people. Well, the minister's responsible for administering the department. And if there's a systematic problem, the minister needs to take responsibility for that problem and for taking action to resolve that problem. The Liberals just don't believe that they're accountable when things go wrong inside the government. We're not talking about a case of one or two bad apples. We're not talking about a junior public servant who by themselves independently broke a rule. We're talking about a systematic issue where over a quarter of contracts in the Foreign Affairs Department do not follow the law. And that's a situation where leadership is required and where leadership has to take responsibility. And as a parliamentary committee, yes, we should seek responses from those responsible for leading the department. That said, I am interested in trying to meet Mr. Johari in the middle with his proposal. So I'd like to move an amendment to the motion to say that the committee call Minister of Foreign Affairs Melanie Joly, Minister of International Development, and Minister of Trade. And then to each appear for a 2-hour meeting, and Deputy Minister and officials responsible for the report to appear for a 2-hour meeting. So I think it reads fine from there. Simply to add in the Minister of International Development and the Minister of Trade. So hopefully that is an acceptable compromise for Mr. Johari, and we'll be able to proceed with that accountability.
Yeah. Mrs. Vignola on the amendment?
Oui, simplement, j'aimerais.
Yes, I would like to receive this amendment in writing so I can see the difference between Ms. Bloch's proposal and also the amendment from Mr. Denuis. Thank you very much.
I think it was just adding 2 ministers, if I'm correct. Adding international development and international trade. So there was no other wording, just those 2 ministers to the motion. Okay. On the amendment, anyone? Oh, can we move to? You know what, colleagues, I'm just going to suspend for a couple seconds, please. Yes, you wish to withdraw your amendment. We
With
have
extreme
a UC
prejudice.
for that.
No,
Thank
just
you,
kidding.
everyone. Mr. Jouari, I see your hand up. You have an amendment?
Yes,
Right,
thank
just
you.
on process though, you need unanimous consent to withdraw my amendment. And
That's what I just did. You probably didn't
Oh.
hear.
Taylor, I thought you'd have my back, but okay.
It was just Mr. Genwis was withdrawing his amendment.
And you're asking for unanimous consent?
I did, and no one objected.
Okay. Well,
Before we go to Mr. Jouari has an amendment. Mr. Kusmirchuk, is your hand up for something?
Yeah, I was going to speak, but I will just defer to Mr. Johari.
Go ahead with your amendment, Mr. Jouari.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank all my colleagues. I wish the Canadian could see the work that's actually happened over the last 10 minutes in the background. We had a very open and very frank conversation, and we landed somewhere that it's going to serve the Canadian the best. So, to my colleagues, thank you. So, I would like to amend Madam Kelly Block's motion as follows. By removing Minister of Foreign Affairs Melanie Joly to appear for a 2-hour meeting, and that line will be removed, and then at the end for a 2-hour meeting, comma, with the option to invite the minister if deemed necessary by the committee. So I'm going to read the whole motion again. Given that the Global Affairs Canada investigation into government contract found a failure rate of 26% and the report found the signed contract was not provided, one contract was approved by an individual who benefited from the transaction, the committee called the deputy minister and official responsible for the report to appear for a 2-hour meeting with the option to invite the minister if deemed necessary by the committee. Thank you.
Okay, on the amendment, I have Mrs. Vignola, then Mrs. Block.
Très rapidement, lorsqu'on
Quickly, when we're talking about this, are we talking about ministerial reports? I would like to be really clear about what we're talking about here. I want to be clear about what we will have to read to get ready. I saw something in a newspaper, but I'm not finished reading the reports yet. Thank you. I would like things to be precise here, maybe not in the motion, but at least verbally, so we know clearly where this is coming from.
Was regarding an internal audit. I can send you the link in both official languages. It was somewhat lengthy internal audit. That's what it was on. So I'll make sure you get the link.
Merci.
Mrs. Block?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I believe that the amendment was to read the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay,
My sincere apology. You are 100% right.
thank you.
So I will read once again to the record. Given that the Global Affairs Canada investigation into government contract found a failure rate of 26% and the report found, in quote, the signed contract was not provided, close quote, comma, open quote, one contract was approved by an individual who benefited from the transaction, close quote, the committee called Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and official responsible for the report to appear for a 2-hour meeting with the option to invite the minister if deemed necessary by the committee. Thank you.
Are we all fine with that? Which is basically original motion, so to be the auditors, the DM, and then as Mr. Jouari originally said in his first intervention, if the committee deems necessary, then we will loop back the minister responsible. Is that correct, everyone? Yes. Do we need to vote, or are we all hands up? Mr. Jouari, your hand was up. You're fine? Or, sorry, Mr. Kusmirchuk? We're good?
All
Mr.
set.
Souza confuses you and Mr. Shawari as well, apparently. Wonderful. So pass. Yes, so pass. Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate everyone working together. And Mr. Shawari, I appreciate you recognizing that. I have Mr. Genuis and then Ms. Atwin.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to proceed with another item. I have
Point of order,
a
Mr. Chair.
motion on notice that I'd like to move.
Sorry, Mr. Genuis.
I'm just wondering if we're returning back to the original speaking order that we had, and I believe I was next.
Sorry, I probably skipped a part. I think we had considered the motion, the amendment, and the motion as amended had passed.
Yep. I have a separate issue that I wanted to be.
Okay, we're on to the next issue, and I recognize Mr. Genuis first, and then yourself. So you'll be up after Mr. Genuis. Mr. Genuis, I apologize. Go ahead, sir.
No problem,
From
Chair.
the top.
Yeah, so I have a separate issue that I want to raise, and it's a motion that I have put on notice. The motion, I'll read it and then I'll explain it. The motion is that the committee, in relation to the opioid epidemic and toxic drug crisis in Canada, A, order the production of all contracts, agreements, or memoranda of understanding to which the Government of Canada is a party signed since January 1st, 2016, concerning the purchase, acquisition, or transfer of Dilaudid or any generic form of hydromorphone for use in any safe supply program, together with any related documents concerning the amounts, dosage, and frequency of delivery of the hydromorphone to be used, provided that these documents shall be deposited with the clerk of the committee in an unredacted form and in both official languages within 3 weeks of the adoption of this order. And B, order the governments of the provinces and territories to provide to the clerk of the committee documents consistent with those described in paragraph A, where that government is a party within 3 weeks of the adoption of this motion. And colleagues, I do just want to signal up front that I am going to spend a few minutes explaining the rationale for this motion. It's an issue that this committee has not, in the period that I've been on it, looked at in detail, but it is importantly related to the mandate of the committee, the operations of government, and it's a contract request, which is in keeping with some of the work that we've done in the past. But it does pertain to a policy area that is newer to us. So I want to lay out the rationale in terms of the context and why this particular request for documents is a high priority for me. We have been discussing in various fora, of course, most notably in the House, the impacts of the opioid crisis and the impacts of the policy currently being advanced and pursued by, I think it's fair to say, the NDP Liberal government, working in BC especially, and considering exceptions to the criminal code and other areas. What that policy that they like to call safe supply, but substantively really is something else. It's about giving taxpayer-funded, dangerous hard drugs, which people are then permitted to use, even to use those and other dangerous street drugs in public places, in hospitals, on buses, in public parks, places where families, seniors, children, and other vulnerable people are present. This is the policy of the current government. They have allowed an exception to the criminal code in BC, and they're considering exceptions in other parts of the country, which would allow public drug use of dangerous hard drugs. And this is something that even the BC NDP has now called for substantial changes to, and so there's a few different parts to their policy, but one part of this is the idea that that all Canadian taxpayers, that the money that they work hard, earn, and then are forced to pay to the government would be used to purchase dangerous hard drugs, which are then provided to people who are struggling with addiction. We don't support this policy. We think that for those who are suffering with addiction. A better policy emphasizes support for treatment and recovery, and that. That emphasis on treatment and recovery reflects a fundamental optimism about the potential of the human person, that all people, regardless of the challenging circumstances they face, have the potential to pursue and benefit from recovery programs. The policy of giving dangerous hard drugs, taxpayer-funded hard drugs to people in this situation reflects a deep pessimism about people in that situation. It reflects, sadly, a belief in some quarters of this country that continuing to take dangerous hard drugs is just the best that can be hoped for in these circumstances. I reject that pessimism. I believe that we can and we should work to bring our loved ones home drug-free. I embrace that optimistic account of human potential, and that's why I believe in a treatment and recovery model. Sadly, for too long in this country, people who want treatment and recovery and maybe who kind of struggle back and forth with deciding on that path, but who make a choice to pursue that path of treatment and recovery, often find that such support is not available to them, and so they head, they're not able to pursue that path. Wouldn't it be better if, instead of spending taxpayer dollars on giving dangerous hard drugs to people struggling with addiction, that we invest those resources into treatment and recovery programs? But there's the impact on there's the impact on the individual who is struggling with addiction, but then there's also the wider impact on the community associated with safe supply programs. And it's important to say that this impact is not limited to the places or even the provinces in which safe supply programs, so-called, operate. They're not limited to places where these exceptions to the criminal code apply. I can say that we see in my province and in other parts of the country the impact of what's happening in BC. So let me explain that a little bit. In British Columbia, especially, the government is pursuing this policy of giving dangerous hard drugs to those struggling with addiction, and very often it's something called Dilaudid, which is a patented version of hydromorphone, and I'll talk a bit more about Dilaudid in a minute, but. We see a lot of evidence of what is called diversion. That is, we know that if quite obviously that if somebody has a severe addiction to say fentanyl, chances are that if they're receiving free Dilaudid or other form of hydromorphone, that it does not satisfy the intensity that they're used to with the product that they have used in the past. And so what often happens, and I think there's considerable evidence to show this, that individuals are able to receive those free, taxpayer-funded hydromorphone pills, that they sell them to others, and that they use that money to buy street drugs, fentanyl, etc. The effect then is that you have this expansion of supply, a proliferation of available Dilaudid pills, which are then causing new addictions. They're more accessible. They're easier for people that are trying drugs for the first time to get access to. And I think there's good evidence as well that they get taken to other parts of the country, that there's organized crime involvement in this, where there is a Dilaudid prescription. Somebody receives the Dilaudid, they sell it, they buy their drug of choice, and then organized crime is working to deliver that Dilaudid product to somebody somewhere else in the country, and organized crime is making money off that, and they're benefiting from the taxpayer subsidy that's going into that original drug. So the effects of this are very significant in the Lower Mainland, but the effects are not limited to the Lower Mainland, because these policies of taxpayer-funded, dangerous, free drugs lead to a significant increase in supply. In general, we're flooding the quote-unquote market with very dangerous drugs, and it makes those drugs cheaper and easier to access for people who haven't used drugs before, so this is a very dangerous effect of the policy being pursued by the NDP Liberal government. We have public drug use, we have diversion, we have increasing harms, increasing addictions, increasing doses, because the social effects of this policy are significant. So I've talked about the impact on the individuals who are struggling with addiction. We talk about the wider impacts on the community, the impacts on vulnerable young people who are maybe receiving these diverted Dilaudid pills. So we see in general how there's been a backlash against these policies because many people are hurt by them. But let's also acknowledge a reality on the other side of it, that while there are many people who are hurt by these NDP Liberal drug policies, there are a few people who benefit from those drug policies. And that is in particular those companies that are involved in producing the drugs, which are then purchased with taxpayers' dollars and made available. That is, I think, fairly obvious that if you're in the business of manufacturing and selling opioids, then greater use of your product, especially the taxpayer being willing to, well, not the taxpayer being willing to, Chair, but the person responsible for dispensing taxpayer money being willing to purchase large quantities of those drugs and give them away for free. While that might be bad news for communities, for individuals affected, on the other end of this, it's good news for the bottom line of the companies, and they potentially have an interest then in perpetuating policies that allow them to continue to sell more of their product and sell more of their product specifically to the government. The sad reality is that a person struggling with addiction is a repeat and captive customer if you're in the business of producing and selling these dangerous drugs. So we should be aware of the agenda of the pharmaceutical companies that are benefiting from these policies, and it might be true in theory that a pharmaceutical company could put aside their self-interest and support treatment and recovery, but that would require a complete and rare suspension of any self-interest calculation. Okay, the other thing, when we look at the interests of the companies involved that are producing and selling these products, I think we should reflect on the history of how these companies have operated in the past. So this really goes back to the first wave of opioid kind of legitimization. And if you look historically at kind of the opioid crisis, I think we can say there have kind of been two periods of corporate-driven opioid legitimization with kind of an interregnum in between. So in the 1990s, we had the first wave of corporate-driven drug acceptance, and the kind of at the heart of that was Purdue Pharma. Purdue Pharma produced a new product which they aggressively marketed. They minimized the risks, and they did so for their own bottom line. The history of that is that kind of opium is the original opioid. There was a long-standing reluctance in the medical community to prescribe opium except in the most extreme circumstances, and then Purdue Pharma came along with their new product, OxyContin, a patented semi-synthetic opioid that they sought to create the impression was less dangerous than what was already on the market, but in many cases was actually much more dangerous. OxyContin incorporated kind of a controlled release technology. It was designed to facilitate a controlled release of opioid-related pain relief over a period of time, and that was supposed to create the illusion of less risk. This was manipulatively marketed because Oxy's controlled release mechanism was not tamper resistant. It could easily be modified to release all of its hit at once, so it carried all of the same risks. But in that context as well, Purdue Pharma made all kinds of clearly unfounded claims minimizing the addiction risk. They made claims that were absolutely not supportable by the science, which they nonetheless purveyed and promoted, and really they aggressively marketed OxyContin as the solution to not just acute pain but also ongoing chronic pain. They called it the drug to stay with. And it was very successfully marketed, and they made a ton of money in the process. And I think it's worth remembering as well that this was intentionally marketed through the lens of minimizing stigma. They said, okay, there's a stigma around opioids, so we want to minimize the stigma around this new product, and we want to minimize the stigma around this product so that people will buy more of it. And the result of this was that at the very beginning it was a new product. There wasn't much, if any, stigma around the new OxyContin product. People with different levels of short and long-term pain were prescribed OxyContin, but then because it was much more addictive than people had been led to believe, and because of the well-known sort of tolerance-inducing effect associated with opioids, people could just not get the same impact, the same level of pain relief at the same doses, and the familiar story that you'll hear from people with lived experience is often this: that there was an initial event causing pain. Maybe it was a car accident, maybe it was long-running unexplained chronic pain. Then opioids were prescribed in response, and then there was what followed was opioid addiction, as there was the individual kind of goes through a spiral of needing higher and higher doses in order to achieve the same effect, and then potentially eventually not being able to get what they're perceiving as what they need in the context of pharmaceutical opioids. So then going to street drugs, and so this was the history of OxyContin, and it's part of the wider history of Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family that owned Purdue Pharma. They have that family had a history of running various businesses that go back further than OxyContin, which involved kind of simultaneous and conflicting interests in different pieces of the medical world. Members of the Sackler family, they ran Purdue Pharma, but they also were involved in a highly successful pharmaceutical advertising business, involved in publication of medical journals, medical education, in fact, sponsoring a whole movement of greater so-called awareness of the epidemic of untreated pain, the idea of pain being a fifth vital sign. All of this was marketed with the goal of being able to sell opioids. There are various other examples of this. The Sacklers played a major role in the marketing, for instance, of Valium in the 1970s, the first wave of the overpromotion of benzodiazepines, and I think we're seeing another wave of the overuse of benzos today. But in any event, the Sacklers made this argument through Purdue Pharma about pain, about stigma, and all of that argument was pointed to, hey, you got to just buy more of our product. And that product conveniently is problem-free. And here we are selling this great product that's going to make us a lot of money, and we're off to the races. And we know the effects of that, though. We know that that increasing the supply of opioids and removing the stigma around those substances. It was not the solution. It was actually the cause of a massive new problem. The reason we have an opioid crisis today, primarily, is because of the over promotion and the lies that were told around OxyContin, and that were subsequently maintained and promoted by Purdue, and I should say, frankly, with the support of McKinsey, for as long as the charade could possibly be continued. So, just fast forward to today, and I think one of the things we need to notice about many of the current kind of conversations and debates around the NDP Liberals' policy here is the ways that arguments being made by people who support the expansion of supply of dangerous drugs, taxpayer funded, is the way some of those arguments actually mirror the original arguments made by the Sacklers through Purdue. Because people said back in the 90s and early 2000s, well, if we take away the stigma around these substances and we make them more widely available, and people can get them in response to their perceived need, then we'll solve the problem. And the result was just a massive increase in supply, was more people accessing these drugs, and that setting them up on a ladder to pursue more and more dangerous substances. And then we have today we have people making similar arguments, saying, okay, we've got this problem of addiction, so the solution is reduce stigma around substances and dramatically increase the available supply. And in fairness, the intention is that these only be supplied to those with existing addiction challenges, but that's not the effect of the policy. So you can kind of see how the original failure is nonetheless being repeated with the new program that is being pursued by the government today. And it's sort of troubling for me that Dilaudid, the go-to safe supply so-called product, is also a Purdue product. So not only are we seeing a repeat of the same kind of history and very similar arguments being made to justify over promoting drugs and making them more available, but we're seeing the same company at the center of it. We're seeing how Purdue Pharma is again making Dilaudid, which is providing a significant benefit to their bottom line, and how, after all that happened with Purdue and OxyContin and the lies that were told and the disregard that was shown for human lives, why are decision makers going back to the same people who substantially caused the opioid crisis in the first place and saying, well, okay, now you can make this new product, which we're going to buy from you, and we're going to think that's the solution. The same justifications are being used. If only we increase the supply of the drug, then we're gonna solve the problem. Apparently, the same arguments are being used. The same company is being brought in to supply the products. Are we really supposed to believe that this big pharma company, Purdue, that after being compelled to pay billions and billions of dollars in settlements in the United States, we're behind on that in Canada, by the way, but Conservatives, we've been pushing that those responsible for the opioid crisis, that they should be required to pay compensation, and that compensation, the full compensation, and that all of that money be used to support treatment and recovery. So we've been pushing for accountability for these companies in Canada. But in the midst of all that has happened, all that we know, all that has been spent, now this government is going back to Purdue to purchase Dilaudid, and so I think that should be troubling. It's troubling for me, and I think for many Canadians as well, who are wondering about these purchases, about potential conflicts of interest, about what's happened in terms of lobbying, what kinds of AstroTurf organizations have been set up to advance the interests of these companies. So that brings us to the motion today. Recognizing that the company that caused the opioid crisis, Purdue, is now producing Dilaudid, which is being purchased through government programs and provided to people. Supposedly, Purdue is the solution to the problem Purdue caused. We need at a minimum to see what is in these contracts, to understand what was committed to, what was agreed to, and one of my biggest concerns in the context of these contracts is understanding what, if any, indemnification structures exist within them. So we know that the last time Purdue was responsible for en masse supplying dangerous drugs to the public, they were significantly sued, and they had to pay billions and billions of dollars to compensate the victims. And it may well be that efforts have been made to prevent that from happening in the future through some kind of indemnification structure. So if indemnification agreements are included in these contracts that protect the companies that are producing these dangerous drugs from being accountable for their effects, I think the public would probably want to know that. So, Mr. Chair, I'll just wrap up here in a moment, but make a few kind of summative comments. We all know about and hear from, in many cases, our constituencies, but many cases as well, I think, from within our own families, about the devastation associated with the opioid crisis. This opioid crisis started because Purdue Pharma told lies and manipulated information and aggressively marketed a new semi-synthetic opioid product, minimizing its risks. A lot of people took it. A lot of people developed substance use disorders as a result of that dangerous misinformation. Then there was a period of kind of increasing awareness around the problems of this, but now we've gone back into this period where some leaders, especially as the policy of this NDP Liberal government, are pushing the idea that increasing the supply of dangerous drugs is the solution. That once again they're claiming that more supply, more widely available supply of drugs is fine and is the solution instead of the continuation of the problem. And the company that caused the opioid crisis in the first place is at the center of supplying the supposed solution in Dilaudid. So once again, you have in this new wave of corporate-driven drug overpromotion, you have the same company, Purdue Pharma, with a new, differently branded opioid product, and this government is falling for it all over again. But I should say as well, Chair, that the motion does not specifically reference Purdue. It references Dilaudid, obviously, which is a Purdue product, but the motion also says any generic form of hydromorphone for use in quote unquote safe supply programs, together with any relevant documents. And I think we need to look as well, just add briefly at other cases, at other companies that are trying to get into this. And I want to share one example of this. Some of you may have heard of a company called Fair Price Pharma. Fair Price Pharma is I understand run as part of a partnership involving Dr. Perry Kendall, who is a former BC public health officer. So Dr. Kendall is involved in this company that is seeking to sell injectable heroin. He has been quoted as saying that that heroin should be more available. For instance, he said, quote, in one interview, "I think it is inexcusable that it is not more widely offered in Canada. I can think of no other evidence-based effective treatment for a life-threatening condition that is withheld from individuals who could benefit from it. It is inexcusable and unethical." So he's saying that not making heroin more available is inexcusable and unethical. So Fair Price Pharma is led by someone who has been very involved in the public conversation around so-called safe supply programs. He continues to be very involved in public conversations around these so-called safe supply programs. But he's also leading a company that is trying to sell a product that is a very dangerous drug that is ostensibly being marketed as again, let's give away more dangerous drugs as a supposed solution to the problem. And I was able to find in public disclosures, by the way, that there have been extensive meetings between Fair Price Pharma and the federal government. These included 2 separate meetings with the former Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Carolyn Bennett, and that these meetings were, quote, to discuss regulatory pathways regarding diacetylmorphine, diacetylmorphine being, of course, heroin. So outside of the history of Purdue Pharma and the relationships, we know that the history of that company in promoting dangerous opioids, we can see as well this very Canadian example of a former public health officer who has a particular perspective and approach that he's advocated when it comes to drug policy. Then when he's out of that role, co-leading a company that is selling dangerous drugs and is having regular access to the government as part of that effort. So we shouldn't pretend that in spite of all the harm that's being done by these dangerous NDP liberal drug policies, that there aren't some people who benefit. And that is the people that are making and selling these products. It's their shareholders. It's people who are the high-priced lobbyists for these companies who meet with government ministers. And I would like this committee and parliamentary committees in general to do more work at trying to uncover some of the relationships that have existed between these bad, dangerous, harmful policies and some of the corporate actors who benefit from them. There have been various people in the media who have done great work digging into this and finding out various parts of it. But it's work that's obviously constrained by public disclosures. If some of these corporate actors are creating and funding AstroTurf organizations who push a message that serves their corporate interests, of course, there would be almost no way of tracking that short of making document production requests. So this committee has unique powers to do that, and these motions are important for getting to the bottom of how of how these dangerous, harmful policies that serve narrow corporate interests but hurt communities are actually being formulated and coming about. So I hope we will be able to order the production of these contracts. And I did warn you in advance that I would have a few things to say on this subject, but I'll wrap up my comments there.
I'm going to interrupt you there, Mr. Genuis, because we're out of resources. Before we adjourn at the next meeting, you'll have an opportunity to resume this, so we'll continue this motion and you'll have the floor. But until then, we are adjourned.